Democrats passed Colorado's most stringent oil and gas regulations in decades, and within minutes, it has an impact on a controversial project planned for the Front Range. 6 months after Denver became a scooter speedway, doctors have seen everything from minor scrapes to devastating head injuries. Stores can't charge you more if you use a credit card, so why can the state government? And the stories of growing up in a city that is changing around you. Next. The first oil well in the West was drilled here in 1860 down near Florence. Colorado's relationship with the oil and gas industry changed today. From cozy enough you could call it a cuddle to a more standoffish stance. Democrats passed the most sweeping regulations in decades today, and they did so without a single Republican vote in the legislature. And within minutes, state regulators delayed hearings this month on projects including the controversial Crestone site, 100 planned wells between Longmont and Erie. Colorado's chief decider on oil and gas is about to become a lot more powerful, and he sat down with our Marshall Zellinger.
The April meeting of the Oil and Gas Commission, the state regulators, it's on hold. Those meetings are the first steps oil and gas operations must go through to start new oil and gas drilling.
We needed to delay the April hearing for a few weeks because we need to reconstitute the commission so that we have a commission that is in line with Senate Bill 181.
This is the first interview with new Oil and Gas Conservation Commission Director Jeff Robbins. Once his boss, Governor Jared Polis, signs this oil and gas bill, the commission that approves the initial steps for oil and gas operations, well, they no longer exist because Senate Bill 181 changed the rules for who sits on the commission. It also changed the rules for how to approve oil and gas permits, putting an emphasis on public health and safety. Hundreds of permits have already made it past the old commission that are simply backlogged. Right now, more than 6,400 well permits for more than 500 sites simply need the director's approval.
I meet twice weekly with my staff, and we go over oil and gas wells that require a little more thorough review, and we'll just continue to do that. We're going to possibly change the criteria, and we're going to have stakeholder input into what the criteria is, including input from the industry. And so but once we get all that set up, we'll continue business as usual in terms of how we are processing oil and gas wells.
He has the power to scrutinize the permits using the new criteria the legislature just passed, but he doesn't believe he has the power to stop oil and gas operations statewide.
There is not a directive to allow that authority to sort of like statewide issue no permits are going to happen. Instead, it's a objective look at site by site whether a well deserves a little more analysis given the new legislative mandate that we now have.
This delay of the April hearing is kind of contingent on when Governor Jared Polis signs the bill into law, because then there's 30 days that some rulemaking has to happen for that new commission to start making some rules, Kyle. And then there's a year out where supposedly everyone from the industry, the public, can give input on the overall rules that touch different parts of what this legislature did, like local government rules, this commission rules. It's a jumbled mess right now.
But meanwhile, you got that huge backlog. You got the stack of applications that are still waiting to come through. No doubt all those producers are hoping to get through on the more lax old rules. He's got the power to apply the new rules. Does it sound like he's going to do that?
Yeah, he made it clear to me that he didn't necessarily want them all to pass through with the old rules, because then that would make Senate Bill 181 useless, essentially. So it sounds like they'll be held to the new criteria, but they don't have to be held up by the commission, because this is in his sole power to approve the final steps that would get an operation going.
Interesting. Very interesting. Marshall, thank you. The bandwagon of Colorado sheriffs saying that they will not enforce an expected gun control bill is now getting pretty crowded. Garfield County is the latest to consider a resolution against Democrats' red flag bill that will be soon signed into law. Garfield votes Monday. Sedgwick and Bent were the last counties to join a long list that now includes more than half of Colorado's counties. That red flag bill, which passed without a Republican vote, can you sense a theme here, has raised some issues about constitutional rights. Our next question comes from Kevin. He wonders why the state government can charge you extra if you pay your bills there with a credit card if a store can't do the same. Kevin was ranting on Twitter, which is what Twitter is for, calling out businesses that he thought were breaking that rule. And that led to a question about why the state can charge a surcharge if you renew your vehicle registration with a credit card. So he looked at the state law here, and state law says that no merchant can charge a fee when somebody uses a credit card instead of check or cash. But the government gives itself an exception. This is in a different statute, which allows the state to cover its cost in processing credit card fees. So you hear a lot of anecdotes about people on scooters around Denver who bite it. You know, they fly over the handlebars or hit cars. But hard numbers on these injuries have been hard to find. Our Steve Steger thinks he's starting to get a handle on it.
You really can't make policy without hard data. And we got a decent hint at data late last month when Swedish Medical Center's parent company tweeted this estimate from someone working in the ER. It claims Swedish sees around 20 scooter-related injuries a week. Denver Health, the closest ER to downtown, isn't ready to put a number next to their estimate.
We're seeing people injured in scooter accidents at least several times a week. Some of these injuries are minor and some are very serious.
Dr. Eric Livonis, an emergency physician at DH, says he's seen a range of injuries.
Well, I've certainly seen people with broken wrists and broken ankles. I've also personally taken care of 2 patients with very devastating head injuries.
The problem is there's no way to get the full scope of injuries. Denver Public Works, the agency that regulates scooters, relies on Denver police numbers. The cops have reported 6 injuries since August 1st. But those only include incidents where police responded to a scene to investigate an accident. It doesn't count your bro who biffed it, broke his arm, and took himself to the ER or urgent care later. And Livonis says there has to be data on that.
There's no question that these electric scooters are a growing safety concern. And the first step in dealing with any public health problem is to measure it and then try to figure out what you can do to make things better.
Our question was, why is this data so hard to collect in hospitals? Dr. Livonis told me it's because there isn't currently a code for an electric scooter injury. They'd actually have to go into the system and find it themselves. There likely will be soon enough. Denver Public Works, in the meantime, says it is working with hospitals to figure out some sort of reporting system when the pilot program ends this summer, Kyle. And one of the most striking things from my conversation with Dr. Livonis, I asked him, do you ride scooters? He said, I used to. Until those 2 brain injuries came into his ER, and he said, no way. He said, in his eyes, there's really no safe place to ride them. The sidewalks are too dangerous and the streets are too dangerous until we get some things figured out.
And you know, we were joking today about you could put the Benny Hill theme song underneath this with people tipping off of scooters and that sort of thing. But then you hear about those horrific injuries. Yeah. You think about it, it's not necessarily the scooters that are unsafe, it's the environment as the city and other places try to figure out where to regulate them. Where can they safely operate?
The environment around them. And then when you look at the little speedometer too, you do have to admit those things go fast. And you see a lot of people riding around without a helmet on. Yeah. And you think about it, that's faster than you and I can run 15 miles an hour. I could probably do like 3. Sure. But still, I mean, that's awfully quick.
Yeah. Well, want people to be safe. That conversation will continue. Steve, thank you. May I make a recommendation? One of the most interesting things I read today. So you've heard us mention David Bernhardt. He's the Coloradan from Rifle, nominated to be President Trump's Interior Secretary. We have also told you about Bernhardt's old firm, the Denver-based lobbying powerhouse Brownstein. The Washington Post reports today that Brownstein's business related to the Interior Department has quadrupled since Bernhardt joined that agency in 2017. If you are curious how that massive haul squares with President Trump's promise to drain the swamp of lobbyist influence, Brownstein told the Post that the surge in its business is due to a, quote, combination of experience and policy change. That full article is on the next Facebook page. Colorado's Democratic Senator Michael Bennet got all angry on the Senate floor again today. He's been doing this a lot since he started talking about a run for president. He shouts to get attention. So there you go. Here's your attention. Democratic Senate candidate Mike Johnston might have some trouble on the campaign trail against Senator Cory Gardner if he's dragging around his enormous pile of cash with him. Or maybe Johnston will just put his record first quarter fundraising haul in the bank and carry a debit card in his pocket. That's probably what he'll do. That would be easier. Johnston raised nearly $2 million. That is the most ever raised in Colorado by a non-incumbent in that initial quarter. Campaign likes to point out that Johnston's not accepting donations from political action committees. He was my guest here on Next in February after he got into this race. He is one of 8 Democrats all in to challenge Republican Senator Cory Gardner. Latest numbers from the census show that there are nearly 1.8 million renters in Colorado, and we hear a lot of complaints from many of them about the high rent prices. There are some states that allow governments to put a cap on how much a landlord can charge, and some legislators in Colorado want that to be an option here. You can imagine how contentious that will be. Our Sonia Gutierrez breaks down the bill.
Senate Bill 225 was introduced this week. It's sponsored by 4 legislators, including Democratic Senator Julie Gonzalez. The bill wants to repeal a prohibition that doesn't allow local governments to control rent prices.
It gives the power back to local communities so that they can decide what is best for them.
Senator Gonzalez represents Denver, so you can imagine everything she hears about rent prices in the city.
1-bedroom apartments going for upwards of $2,000 a month here in Denver.
She says that's the problem. So according to the city of Denver, the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is nearly $1,500. 87% of renters earn less than $35,000 a year. That means nearly half of their check goes to rent alone.
We should be doing better than that.
I'm what you would call a mom and pop landlord.
Teo Nicolais owns a few apartments in Lakewood and Westminster. He disagrees with the bill.
If there's a cap in terms of how high rents can go, landlords will not be able to pay to keep up their properties.
His point is that if the city puts a cap on how much he can charge, they won't be making enough money to pay for the property and will eventually have to sell it, taking that rental unit off the market altogether.
A renter's dream should be that there are so many vacant properties that if they don't like their landlord, if they don't like their price, if the landlord isn't doing their job, the renter can simply leave. That only happens if we have an abundance of supply. And rent control doesn't create that. Rent control creates scarcity.
It's not a renter's dream to be hopping from one place to the other because the landlord keeps renting their rental.
But what you certainly don't want is a situation where a renter can't leave. And we see that in rent control.
As Sonia Gutierrez reporting, this bill again would give local governments an option to put in rent controls on a local level. We touched base with Councilmember Paul Lopez, who says he'd support the idea of rent controls in Denver.
Writing about Denver has just always been something that's been close to my heart.
It's a story about a city, a changing city, her city.
It's really important to me that I am depicting our city in a way that it feels authentic and true to me.
This state has so many great mountain biking trails. Creating your own is not how you Colorado. And if next viewers are so sharp-eyed they see that I don't set my wristwatch forward and back, do you think they'd miss this right on Coors Field the week of opening day? Next. Well, this just in from the Capitol. Great news for teachers who want to sext their students. State legislators just killed a bill that would close the loophole that we've covered on this program. The one that allows teachers to send sexually explicit comments to 15, 16, and 7-year-olds so long as those comments don't include photos or video. This bill was prompted in part by a case that we covered out of Northwest Colorado last year, where a teacher was found not guilty at trial because investigators could never recover the photos and videos that the victim said existed. Another example for you tonight of how not to Colorado. This is a map version. Golden Police put it up on Facebook. That red line there, that is the Kinney Run Trail. Enjoy it. You're welcome to use it. You see that yellow line? Golden Police say people carved out their own mountain bike trail there, complete with ramps. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that. It damages the land. It causes all kinds of problems. So workers went out, they cleaned it up, they put up signs, asked people not to do it. What happened? They took down the signs and they put in their trail again. Come on, that's not how you Colorado.
A few light showers showing up on the radar around the metro area, and we've got those cloudy skies still with us tonight. After a day with temperatures in the lower 60s, we'll be even warmer tomorrow and Friday as high pressure builds back in on the backside of this system, which is moving quickly out of the state. It's a slow storm, but it's a warm storm, and it's actually, well, producing a few thunderstorms, a little bit of lightning and rain out on the plains, and that line of storms will push east tonight. A low pressure area east of us means a warm, dry 48 hours ahead of the next surge of moisture coming at us from California. The isolated thunderstorms should stay below severe limits, and we do expect some clearing here in the next couple of hours. Snow showers winding down in the high country and not enough snow that we have advisories out for travel. So tonight, if you're out and about, grab the umbrella. There's a chance we'll see some rain between now and 9 o'clock, and then we're done. Start off at 38 tomorrow, get a high of 66 Thursday, close to 70 for the home opener on Friday. That thunderbolt is for an evening thunderstorm, and then we've got mid-60s Saturday with a 20% chance of showers. It's a stronger, colder storm next week, Kyle. We may actually see the rain mixed with snow next Wednesday, but that's next Wednesday.
Evening thunderbolts, what they called me in high school. Thank you, Kathy. Twice I have forgotten to change my wristwatch when the time changes, and you people have caught it on air. you're so attentive. So did Coors Field think that next viewers we're going to see their jankety clock is still having trouble, especially the week of the home opener? Next viewers told us again, you got a clock except for 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 6:21 in the afternoon. Can't have that for the home opener, man. Nation's eyes are going to be upon us. So we asked the Rockies if we knew their clock had stopped. They are so sick of hearing from this on it. They said, yes, we're doing maintenance work. We checked today, and the clock is in proper working order. Northwest Denver is rich in stories.
I wanted to show that Denver is an old place and it has a lot to offer and a lot of stories that have been untold.
She lived them. Now she's telling them. And check out this Game of Thrones in Lakewood next. Watching a place you love change in ways that you don't love, it's difficult. A woman who grew up in Denver is trying to help all of us who moved here to see the city through her eyes. Mike Grady has her story.
I've been here about 22 years in the heart of what we call the Highlands nowadays.
In a part of Denver rife with change, West Side Books feels like home.
You're not talking about Buckminster Fuller.
Yeah. Bucky Fuller.
Okay.
It's the bookstore to me, the only one.
Collie Fajardo-Anstine started working here when she was 15.
I needed a job, a summer job, and Lois hired me. Lois is the owner.
I always knew she was going to do something.
It's so incredibly special to come into the bookstore where I used to sell customers books and see my own book on the shelf.
Her first book, Sabrina and Karina, came out Tuesday.
And it follows the lives of Chicanas of indigenous ancestry from this area.
A work drawn from her own experiences and research.
I listen to a lot of oral histories, I interview elders, I look through historical documents and photographs.
Breathing life into her stories.
I'll read the beginning of Tommy. We lived on Denver's north side, in the shadow of Mile High Stadium, a neighborhood that was now called Highlands. The only white people said that.
She hopes new Denverites hear the perspective of a Colorado native.
You know, the Rhino area, we never would have called it that. I don't even know what Lohi is, but I know it's an area.
It is a picture of what Denver is about and has been about.
It's important to realize that there are people who live in a place before and they have a history that's attached to a place. And when you change the name of the place where the people come from, in a way you're erasing the history of the people who are already there.
Collie puts her life in her work.
And thanks for the mention in the book. It was pretty sweet and made me cry.
Making sure Denver stays her hometown.
And the acknowledgments, yeah.
Aw, I didn't know that.
For next,
I didn't know anyone was reading the acknowledgments.
I'm Mike Grady.
Collie launches her book Friday at Lighthouse Writers, of course, in Denver. Take a look at this Game of Thrones spotted by next viewer Molly Helpin in Lakewood. This is near Wright Street and 6th Frontage, where clearly someone is feeling flush because that must be expensive. And here they are coated in snow, absolutely picturesque. We understand the Silver Reef Apartments was installing new water-efficient commodes in all of its units. A manager with the complex says they finished up the work yesterday, so don't bother driving by looking for the field of flushes. Your feedback tonight came in all caps, so that could really go either way. Next. Finish with your feedback tonight. Shelley writes in all caps, Kyle, how'd this happen with the oil and gas law? Didn't we the people just vote on this? Voters turned down a statewide setback for oil and gas drilling. This is local control. It might eventually end up meaning the same thing, but two separate ways of doing this. We knew this was going to be an issue ever since the voters voted that down while voting overwhelmingly for Democratic politicians who campaigned on oil and gas regulations. There's always been tension there. Carolyn from Golden says, you almost always seem to dismiss Senator Bennett when speaking about him. Why? Well, I think we gave him a lot of attention the first time he blew his stack on the Senate floor, right when he needed attention for his run for president. A little bit less attention the second time, not so much attention this third time. Hope that makes sense. See you next time.